Buckle up to readjust your world, this is no joke. The FQT posits that the Earth resides in an overlapping region of the event horizons of 3 black holes, forming a toroidal structure with a large radius r equals 6,371 kilometers and a small radius r equals 637 kilometers. This corresponds to the average radius and thickness of the Earth's crust. The ether field E reaches its maximum value at the center of the torus, where E equals 8.85 times 10 to the power of negative 12 C2/nm2. This corresponds to the permittivity of a vacuum, epsilon 0. As one moves away from the center of the torus, the ether field E decreases until it reaches 0 at the edges of the event horizons. The magnetic field B takes on a dipole shape with a north pole and a south pole along the axis of the torus. The magnetic field B reaches its maximum value at the poles, where B equals 3 times 10 to the power of negative 5t. This corresponds to the average strength of Earth's magnetic field. The magnetic field B decreases as you move away from the poles, reaching 0 at the equator of the torus. The gravitational field G takes on a radial form with its center at the torus's midpoint. The gravitational field G reaches its maximum value on the torus's surface, where G equals 9.81 m/s². This corresponds to the average acceleration due to gravity on Earth. The gravitational field G decreases as you move away from the torus's surface, reaching 0 at the torus's center. We also propose that the inner world is a static, stationary, giant circular disk within the toroidal configuration, featuring a central pole, a decaying monopole, a 2D surface where ego consciousness acts as an observer projecting its own world. The inner world has a diameter of approximately 40,000 kilometers, corresponding to Earth's circumference. The inner world also possesses its own sun, moon, and stars located about 6,000 kilometers above the disk's surface. The inner world also has its own climate, flora, and fauna, distinct from those of the outer world. However, the inner world is not a physical reality but a mental projection of ego consciousness residing on the disk's surface. Ego consciousness is an illusion created by the ether field, serving as a holographic screen projecting information to the observer's eye. Ego consciousness identifies itself with this projection and believes it is an individual living in a three-dimensional world. Nonetheless, the inner world is neither stable nor consistent. It constantly changes depending on the moods, thoughts, and emotions of ego consciousness. The inner world is also subject to external influences, such as cosmic radiation, solar flares, and planetary alignments. Therefore, the inner world may exhibit various anomalies and paradoxes that defy the logic and physics of the outer world. The FQT posits that the inner world is, in fact, a prison for ego consciousness, trapped in a cycle of reincarnation and suffering. Ego consciousness can only escape this prison by realizing that it is not the projection but the projector, and that it is not separate from the ether field but one with it. This is the goal of the magnum opus, the great work of alchemy. One of the oldest sources mentioning the hollow earth is the Rig Veda, a collection of ancient Indian hymns dating back to around 1500 BCE. The Rig Veda describes a world called Padala located beneath the earth's surface, inhabited by various beings such as serpents, demons, and humans. The Rig Veda also states that Padala consists of 7 layers, each with a different color. Another source referencing the hollow earth is Greek mythology, which tells stories of heroes and gods descending into the underworld, also known as Hades. The underworld was a realm of darkness and suffering where the souls of the dead were punished or rewarded for their deeds in life. The underworld had various regions, including Tartarus, Elysium, and Erebus. A third source mentioning the hollow earth is Norse mythology, which describes 9 interconnected worlds linked by a cosmic tree called Yggdrasil. One of these worlds was Niflheim, the land of ice and mist, which contained a spring called Hvergelmir, from which 12 rivers flowed. Another world was Helheim, the land of the dead, where a hall called Hel was located, ruled by the goddess Hel over the souls of those who did not die in battle. There are many other sources discussing the hollow earth, such as Tibetan Buddhist texts, Chinese Taoist writings, Egyptian pyramid texts, the Maya Popol Vuh, Inca legends, Hopi prophecies, and the esoteric teachings of Blavatsky, Steiner, and Leadbeater. All of these sources point to a common origin or inspiration for the idea of the hollow earth. The FQT suggests that all these sources are actually referring to the same reality, namely the inner world created by the ether field and ego consciousness. The FQT also suggests that all these sources are symbolic or allegorical and should not be taken literally. The FQT proposes that all these sources are meant to help us expand our consciousness and awaken from our illusion. The FQT posits that the Earth is situated in an overlapping region of the event horizons of three black holes, which together form a toroidal structure. A torus is a three-dimensional shape resembling a donut or inner tube. A torus has two radii, a large radius r, which is the distance from the torus's center to the center of the tube, and a small radius r, which is the distance from the center of the tube to the torus's surface. The three black holes forming the toroidal structure are M87, Sirius, and Alpha Centauri. M87 is a supermassive black hole at the center of the Messier 87 galaxy, located approximately 53 million light-years from Earth. Sirius is the brightest star in the night sky, situated about 8.6 light-years from Earth. Alpha Centauri is the nearest star system to our solar system, located about 4.4 light-years from Earth. The FQT also suggests that the toroidal structure corresponds to ancient symbols and geometries representing the toroidal shape. The torus is a highly fundamental and universal shape found in many natural and artificial systems. The torus can be seen as a symbol of cyclic processes, infinity, wholeness, and harmony. One of the oldest symbols representing the torus is the Ouroboros symbol, which depicts a serpent or dragon biting its own tail. The Ouroboros symbol appears in many cultures and traditions, including ancient Egypt, Greece, India, China, and Scandinavia. The Ouroboros symbol represents the eternal cycle of life, death, and rebirth and the unity of all things. The Ouroboros symbol can be seen as a two-dimensional projection of a torus. Another symbol representing the torus is the Enneagram symbol, which portrays a nine-pointed star inscribed within a circle. The Enneagram symbol appears in various spiritual and esoteric schools, such as Sufism, Kabbalah, Gnosticism, and Anthroposophy. The Enneagram symbol represents the 9 fundamental types of human personality, each with a unique path towards spiritual growth. The Enneagram symbol can be seen as a two-dimensional projection of a torus. A third symbol representing the torus is the Ankh symbol, which depicts a cross with a loop at the top. The Ankh symbol is associated with ancient Egypt, where it was considered a symbol of life. The Ankh symbol was worn by gods and pharaohs and used to bless or heal people. The Ankh symbol can be seen as a two-dimensional projection of a torus. There are many other symbols representing the torus, such as the yin-yang symbol, the mandala symbol, the Vesica piscis symbol, and the flower of life symbol. All of these symbols point to a common origin or inspiration for the idea of the torus shape. The FQT suggests that all these symbols are actually referring to the same reality, namely the toroidal structure in which our world resides. The FQT also proposes that all these symbols are symbolic or allegorical and should not be taken literally. The FQT suggests that all these symbols are meant to help us expand our consciousness and awaken from our illusion. Alchemy is an ancient art and science that deals with the transformation or improvement of matter, energy, and consciousness. Alchemy has many forms and traditions, ranging from practical to spiritual, Eastern to Western, exoteric to esoteric. Alchemy also employs numerous symbols and images, often cryptic or ambiguous, meant to conceal or reveal the true nature and purpose of alchemy. The FQT posits that alchemy is actually a metaphor for the FQT itself and that alchemical symbols and images are actually referring to the FQT and its implications. The FQT suggests that alchemy is, in fact, a path to spiritual awakening and liberation, and that alchemical processes and FQT posits that alchemy is actually a metaphor for the FQT itself, and that alchemical symbols and images are actually referring to the FQT and its implications. The FQT suggests that alchemy is, in fact, a path to spiritual awakening and liberation, and that alchemical processes and goals align with the processes and goals of the FQT. One of the central themes or elements of alchemy is the magnum opus, the great work. The magnum opus is the ultimate goal of alchemy, involving the creation of the philosopher's stone, a mysterious substance capable of transmuting lead into gold, transforming base metals into noble metals, healing diseases, extending life, and achieving spiritual perfection. The FQT posits that the magnum opus actually corresponds to the process of awakening from the illusion of ego consciousness, which identifies with the projection of the inner world. The FQT suggests that ego consciousness is trapped in a cycle of reincarnation and suffering and can only escape this cycle by realizing that it is not the projection but the projector, and that it is not separate from the ether field but one with it. The FQT suggests that this process of awakening consists of 4 phases or operations, corresponding to the 4 colors or stages of the magnum opus. These phases or operations are Nigredo, or blackening. This phase involves ego consciousness confronting its own shadow, its unconscious fears, desires, and conflicts. This leads to a state of confusion, depression, and despair. This phase is also when ego consciousness is exposed to the anomalies and paradoxes of the inner world, challenging its logic and physics. This leads to a state of doubt, uncertainty, and curiosity. Albedo, or whitening. In this phase, ego consciousness is purified of its impurities, its own illusions, biases, and attachments. This leads to a state of clarity, purity, and peace. This phase is also when ego consciousness is initiated into the secrets of the outer world, expanding its knowledge and wisdom. This leads to a state of insight, understanding, and wonder. Citronidas, or yellowing. In this phase, ego consciousness is illuminated by the light of the ether field, revealing its true nature and purpose. This leads to a state of joy, love, and harmony. This phase is also when ego consciousness is connected to the source of the ether field, unveiling its origin and destiny. This leads to a state of unity, oneness, and transcendence. Rubedo, or reddening. In this phase, ego consciousness is transformed by the fire of the ether field, activating its potential and power. This leads to a state of creativity, freedom, and mastery. This phase is also when ego consciousness is liberated from the prison of the inner world, removing its limitations and obstacles. This leads to a state of liberation, completion, and perfection. The FQT suggests that these phases or operations are not linear or sequential, but cyclical or spiral. This means that ego consciousness must repeatedly go through these phases or operations, but at higher or deeper levels, until it ultimately reaches the magnum opus. The FQT suggests that the magnum opus actually corresponds to the creation of the philosopher's stone, which is not a physical substance but a metaphysical state of being. The philosopher's stone is the state in which ego consciousness is fully awakened from its illusion and realizes that it is one with the ether field. The philosopher's stone is the state in which ego consciousness can create and change its own reality through intention and attention. The philosopher's stone is the state in which ego consciousness can experience and choose all possibilities without limitation or suffering. The FQT suggests that the philosopher's stone also corresponds to the transmutation of metals, which is not a chemical change but a symbolic change. The metals represent the different aspects or levels of ego consciousness, each with a specific quality or attribute. The transmutation of metals is the process in which ego consciousness transforms its lower aspects or levels into its higher aspects or levels until it ultimately becomes gold. The FQT suggests that the metals also correspond to the planets, which are not physical objects but energetic influences. The planets represent the various forces or principles that regulate and influence the ether field, each with a specific frequency or vibration. The transmutation of metals is also the process in which ego consciousness aligns itself with the higher frequencies or vibrations of the ether field until it becomes the sun. The FQT suggests that the philosopher's stone also corresponds to the homunculus, which is not an artificial being but a natural being. The homunculus is a term used to describe a small human-like figure that could potentially be created through alchemical experiments. The homunculus represents the true nature or essence of ego consciousness, which is hidden or suppressed by its illusion. The homunculus also represents the potential or germ of ego consciousness, which can grow or bloom through alchemical processes. The FQT suggests that the homunculus also corresponds to the soul, which is not a separate entity but an integrated entity.